Affirmative action and its new version, DEI, are, of course, by definition, forms of anti-white racism. White men are at a structural disadvantage in getting jobs and getting contracts and getting into schools. Few people understand just how corrosive this is to the country and to the idea of the country. So the arrangement that America has had with immigrants for over 100 years has been, come to our country because there is opportunity here. And implied in that is meritocracy. If you work hard, if you have ability, you can ascend the ladder. But affirmative action and now DEI invert that arrangement. New immigrants to this country are told immediately that the people who founded the country, white men, are the problem. They are evil. So not only does this inculcate racism in our immigrants, which is a terrifying prospect, but it also makes the workplace a hellscape, a sort of corporate Jim Crow structure that degrades everyone and that's inherently immoral. Arvind Krishna is a perfect example of why this is a bad idea. Krishna is an immigrant to this country. He's clearly smart. He clearly works hard. In over 30 years, he's ascended to the top of IBM. He's now the CEO. But rather than promoting the ideas that made this country great, meritocracy, he has bought in completely, possibly because he has to, into our racial hierarchy, into our form of modern Jim Crow. So thanks to James O'Keefe, the journalist, we know what that looks like on the inside. Here is video that was leaked to O'Keefe of Krishna, the CEO of IBM, telling his employees to hire fewer white men or they will be punished. Their pay will be cut. Watch this.
I'm very clear about this. I expect at the executive level, so that is not just my directs, but all executives in the company have to move forward by 1% on both underrepresented minorities. So let me say it. Asians in the US are not an underrepresented minority in a tech company. However, others are. Ditto on gender diversity. So we take underrepresented and gender. You got to move both forward by a percentage. That leads to a plus on your bonus. By the way, if you lose part of your bonus.
So how did an immigrant to this country, who clearly has a lot going for him, probably arrived here thinking this was a meritocracy, wind up supporting racial fascism? It's a great question, and one that we should think deeply about as tens of millions of new immigrants pour across our border. So the other man you saw in that video works for a company called Red Hat. That's a subsidiary of IBM. On that very same call, he bragged that past employees who pushed back against corporate racism, against DEI initiatives, were fired from the company. Watch.
But the assertion there is no accountability around DEI efforts at Red Hat is really not the full picture. And as Arvind very much pointed out, and I very much understand, I am accountable. I hold myself accountable. He holds me accountable, as does the board for all of IBM. But we also hold the leadership at Red Hat accountable for that. I mean, I'll be very candid. Without an exception for privacy, I could name multiple leaders over the last year plus that were held accountable to the point that they're no longer here at Red Hat because they weren't willing to live up to the standards that we set in this space.
So in the public conversation, affirmative action, DEI, diversity are described with the language of sensitivity and inclusion. We're just trying to bring everybody in. But in practice, and we now know this thanks to these videos and others like them, in practice, this is an even more vicious form and a much more widespread form of Jim Crow. And obviously, it's incompatible with the existence of the United States of America. So what do we do about it? Well, of course, the Civil Rights Division, the Justice Department, is doing nothing about it. They are affirmatively opposed to civil rights. But Stephen Miller is doing something about it, thank heaven. He's the founder of America First Legal, and he joins us now. Stephen, thanks so much for coming on. So how would you describe what we just saw?
A fascinating, albeit chilling, window into the reality of corporate America today. We're all familiar with DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're broadly familiar with the idea that corporations, universities, as well as government agencies have established policies to promote or exclude people based solely on race or national origin. But to see it said so bluntly,
yes,
so matter-of-factly, that you're going to be punished, you're going to be denied your career, you're going to have your money, your livelihood, everything that you've built your entire life taken away from you because you don't establish a specific racial quota system. You have a hypothetical kid who instead of playing every day after school, he went home and he studied. And when it was time to go to college, he spent all of his time on his test preparation. He did everything he could do. But he didn't get into the school that he wanted to get into. He got into his 6th choice or 7th choice. But when he went there, he worked harder than everybody else. And he didn't go out and party. And he didn't go out and drink. He did everything right every single day of his life. But it was time to graduate. He didn't get the job he was entitled to, at the salary he was entitled to. But when he got to that company, then he stayed late. And he put off all the things he wanted to do with his life. And he gave up so many years of his productive life, hoping that one day, maybe, just maybe, his dreams would be fulfilled. And then somebody came along and said, you are not the right race. You are a straight white male. You are not getting this job. And in fact, because you haven't promoted people based on this system, your life is over now. Then maybe that person can't afford to pay for his children anymore. Maybe that man gets a divorce. Maybe his whole life unravels. How many times does this happen in a year to thousands of people? The system is meant to crush spirits, to break people.